Welcome to this relaxing journey through the world of Fallout. Let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from tonight, and if you enjoy the videos, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next one. Fallout 4 is one of the richest entries in the series when it comes to hidden Easter eggs. The Commonwealth is filled with small details tucked into corners of Boston, some that are funny, some that are dark, and others that are quiet tributes to other works of pop culture. These secrets reward curiosity, giving players something memorable each time they explore a new street, a forgotten basement, or a half-buried ruin. One of the most beloved discoveries is the wreck of the USS Constitution, an 18th century warship lodged on top of a building. Inside, the ship is crewed by eccentric robots who still believe they are sailors faithfully serving their country. The captain, a modified Mr. Handy, addresses the player with pomp and ceremony, treating his mission with utmost seriousness. The quest eventually leads to the ship taking flight across Boston using rocket engines strapped to its hull, crashing onto rooftops, and finally setting sail in the most absurd way possible. This Easter egg is not only humorous, but also a commentary on Fallout's central theme, the old world clashing with the absurdity of the wasteland. In early Concord, a better-known gag sits inside the Concord Speakeasy, a bathroom scene where a bathtub is surrounded by posed mannequins with knives, empty bottles nearby. It's a classic Fallout sight gag, creepy, funny, and totally environmental without any quest marker pointing you to it. Fallout 4 is also home to the chilling Dunwich Borers, a quarry filled with ghouls and strange visions. This location is a direct continuation of the Lovecraftian references first introduced in Fallout 3's Dunwich building. Exploring the quarry reveals terminals and notes that speak of an ancient artifact buried deep underground, and as the player delves deeper, flashes of hallucinations occur, showing workers being sacrificed. This is a clear nod to the works of H.P. Lovecraft, particularly the Dunwich Horror. It connects Fallout's ruined America to classic horror literature, blending post-nuclear ruin with cosmic dread. Bethesda also added a sly reference to the popular game franchise Dark Souls, referencing the Nuka World expanded content. Deep within the world, players can find a campfire with a sword sticking out of it, a direct recreation of the iconic bonfires from that series. There is no quest attached, no explanation, simply a quiet Easter egg placed for observant wanderers to stumble across. It shows how Fallout not only references older culture, but also nods to its peers in modern gaming. Boston being the setting for Fallout 4 means the developers had plenty of room to weave in sports references. At Fenway Park, reimagined as Diamond City, fans of baseball can find nods to the history of the Boston Red Sox. Around the stadium, graffiti and commentary reference the team's legends and cursed history. Even a particular questline about a rare baseball memorabilia hunt reflects how strongly Boston's identity is tied to the sport. This Easter egg grounds the game in its real-world setting, blending fact and fiction in a way only Fallout can manage. Other Easter eggs highlight Bethesda's sense of humor. In the Commonwealth, players can come across a fridge containing a skeleton wearing a fedora. This is a direct nod to Indiana Jones and the infamous scene where he survives a nuclear blast by hiding inside a refrigerator. Fallout 4 pokes fun at this pop culture moment, while also tying it back to its own nuclear themes. The skeleton's placement suggests that this Indiana Jones met a different fate than his cinematic counterpart, ending up as just another relic of the wasteland. There are also smaller nods to iconic films. In one house, a bathtub contains a skeleton and a toaster, clearly suggesting an unfortunate accident. This is a recurring type of humor across Fallout games, where environmental storytelling leaves darkly comedic scenes for players to interpret. These skeletal tableaux function almost like visual Easter eggs, telling jokes without words. Fallout 4 also includes a number of references to its own history. At certain locations, players can find Vault Boy bobbleheads, a collectible series that originated in Fallout 3. These bobbleheads not only provide gameplay bonuses, but also serve as Easter eggs, celebrating Fallout's mascot. Each one is carefully placed in a location relevant to its theme, such as the medicine bobblehead in a hospital. Collecting them all feels like a scavenger hunt through Fallout's own identity. Grognak the Barbarian comics return in Fallout 4 as well, a nod to the series' long-running parody of pulp adventure stories. Each issue grants small bonuses, but the true reward is seeing the campy cover art scattered across the wasteland. Grognak's over-the-top poses and exaggerated muscles contrast with the bleak ruins, injecting humor into the survival. It is an Easter egg that doubles as gameplay progression, tying lore, parody, and mechanics together. Another clever reference comes in the form of a hidden weapon. The Cryolator, a freeze gun locked in a case in Vault 111, is a nod to classic science fiction ray guns. Players who notice it early cannot access it until they return with the companion, Dogmeat, who can fetch it through the bars. This interaction functions as both an Easter egg for observant players and a clever way to encourage experimentation with companions. The Commonwealth is also home to several UFO references. At a certain point in the game, a random event triggers a UFO crashing to the ground. Following the smoke trail leads to a hidden cave where the player can find an alien wielding a unique blaster. This is a continuation of the alien Easter eggs from Fallout 3, where the Mothership Zeta expansion expanded the lore of extraterrestrials in Fallout's universe. In Fallout 4, the Easter egg remains simple and mysterious, leaving fans to speculate about the alien's role. A more subtle pop culture nod lies in the unmarked quest chain involving a teddy bear and a bottle of beer found in a ruined home. The arrangement mimics the character Ted from the comedy films, a crude stuffed bear who drinks and parties. Fallout 4 often uses teddy bears in funny situations, such as sitting at a chessboard or holding a plunger. These placements serve as miniature Easter eggs, encouraging players to check every corner. Some Easter eggs acknowledge Bethesda's other franchises. In one location, a terminal includes a message referencing the Thieves Guild, a faction from the Elder Scrolls. Another small nod involves a Skyrim-style helmet placed on a mannequin. These moments remind players of the studio's other work while rewarding longtime fans with a wink of recognition. The Commonwealth also features references to real American history. The Old North Church, home to the railroad faction, contains coded lantern messages inspired by the historical ride of Paul Revere. The fusion of Revolutionary War symbolism with Fallout's retrofuturism creates an Easter egg that doubles as world building. Players familiar with Boston's landmarks notice how these sites are reimagined in a post-nuclear context. Even the vaults themselves hide jokes. Vault 75, located under a school, reveals itself as an experiment in training children into super soldiers. The educational posters and propaganda throughout the vault parody both mid-century schooling and military indoctrination. While dark, these discoveries serve as Easter eggs that deepen Fallout's satire of institutions. Throughout Fallout 4, the layering of humor, horror, history, and pop culture makes the Commonwealth feel alive. Every skeleton scene, every comic book cover, every hidden weapon or reference adds texture to the game. For players wandering late at night, these discoveries feel like whispers from another world, reminders that even in the end of the world, jokes, tributes, and cultural echoes survive. Fallout 4 contains so many hidden nods and strange details that even after hundreds of hours, players continue to discover new ones. The design of the Commonwealth encourages wandering into every basement, rooftop, and abandoned store, each corner holding the possibility of an odd reference or environmental joke. These Easter eggs not only reward exploration, but also give the game its personality, making Boston feel like a place shaped by both tragedy and humor. One of the most memorable hidden sequences begins when players investigate Pickman Gallery. At first glance, it looks like another raider hideout, but inside is a disturbing art gallery filled with bloody corpses posed in grotesque ways. The gallery is a tribute to the short story Pickman's Model by H.P. Lovecraft, a tale about a painter whose horrifying works are more real than they appear. The reference ties into Fallout's continuing fascination with cosmic horror, a theme seen in other places like the Dunwich Borers. It demonstrates how Bethesda integrates classic literature into the DNA of the Wasteland. Another small but striking Easter egg comes from the quest involving Cabot House. The Cabot family are eccentric survivors who have lived far longer than ordinary humans. Their longevity is explained by a mysterious artifact found in an ancient tomb. This story is not only a quest line, but also a direct nod to pulp adventure stories about immortality, ancient curses, and lost civilizations. The idea of a wealthy Boston family surviving the war through supernatural science fits perfectly into Fallout's blend of science fiction and dark humor. Elsewhere in Boston, players can stumble upon a chilling little discovery in a place called the Museum of Witchcraft. The building is dark, filled with eerie noises, and seems haunted at first. Eventually, it is revealed to house a powerful deathclaw, but the atmosphere and setting pay homage to horror stories about Salem witches and haunted houses. Even the design of the museum recalls Massachusetts history, blending real-world culture with Fallout's fiction. The Easter egg works because it combines gameplay challenge with cultural satire. Another clever nod hides in the Cambridge police station, where the Brotherhood of Steel sets up operations. On the bulletin board, observant players can find recruitment posters with stylized art that mirrors real-world military propaganda. Some posters reference slogans and images from the 1940s, directly parodying the optimistic art of the era. While subtle, these touches function as Easter eggs that reward players who slow down and examine the environment instead of rushing past. Fallout 4 also hides references to Bethesda's own legacy. One of the most obvious is the Skyrim-style helmet that can be found in the game. It is placed in a way that feels like a wink at longtime fans, blending two of the studio's most iconic franchises. Similarly, terminals scattered around sometimes include jokes about dragon shouts, again nodding to the Elder Scrolls without breaking the immersion of Fallout's world. These inclusions act as lighthearted gifts for players who followed Bethesda across different series. In the ruins of Boston, teddy bears are often found in odd poses. One of the funniest examples is a teddy bear sitting at a small desk with glasses and a pencil, clearly studying. Another holds a cigar and sits in a chair, like a mob boss. Yet another lies in a bathtub, surrounded by empty bottles. These small scenes are not tied to quests or dialogue, but they have become some of the most beloved Easter eggs. They show Bethesda's commitment to filling the world with tiny details that players can discover and laugh at. Another Easter egg worth noting involves the Silver Shroud questline. In this story, the player dons the costume of a pulp superhero and delivers dramatic lines in combat. The entire quest is an Easter egg, paying tribute to pulp magazines and radio dramas of the 1940s. The dialogue, costumes, and tone parody the superhero genre while letting players immerse themselves in it. For fans of classic media, the Silver Shroud is both a quest and a cultural reference rolled into one. Fallout 4 is also full of environmental gags involving skeletons. One particularly memorable setup shows a skeleton slumped in front of a television with a bucket of popcorn, clearly frozen in the moment of enjoying entertainment before the bombs dropped. Another skeleton appears in a toilet stall with a newspaper, a grim reminder of everyday life cut short in absurd fashion. These skeletal scenes serve as quiet Easter eggs, blending dark humor with tragedy. The game also includes nods to classic literature. At the Good Neighbor location, a character named Hancock dresses in Revolutionary War attire and calls himself after the historical figure John Hancock. His entire persona functions as both satire and tribute to Boston's revolutionary identity. By using real history as inspiration, Fallout 4 layers its fiction with cultural Easter eggs that tie back to the setting. Boston Common holds another memorable Easter egg in the form of Swan, a super mutant behemoth lurking in a pond. The setup is a parody of monster movie tropes, particularly the idea of something massive lurking beneath calm waters. The encounter transforms an otherwise ordinary pond into a legendary battle. Swan has since become one of Fallout 4's most famous Easter eggs, remembered for the shock of discovery and the strange notes scattered nearby, hinting at the creature's tragic origin. Even the smallest details serve as references. A lunchbox item that players can find is decorated with Vault Boy in various poses, each referencing different perks or jokes. Collecting these lunchboxes sometimes produces confetti and silly sounds, breaking the tension of the wasteland. These items function as miniature Easter eggs within gameplay, delighting players who stumble upon them. Another clever inclusion comes in the form of Grognak's axe, a weapon tied to the fictional comic book hero within Fallout's universe. The weapon deals significant melee damage and reinforces the parody of pulp fantasy. It is both a practical item and an Easter egg, tying into Fallout's long-running use of parody media. Fallout 4 also revisits aliens, a recurring Easter egg across the franchise. After witnessing a UFO crash, players who follow the trail can find a wounded alien and claim its blaster. This continuation of Fallout 3's alien nod keeps the mystery alive while offering unique rewards. It serves as both continuity and Easter egg, reminding fans of the wider strangeness that lurks beyond the wasteland. Pop culture nods also appear in the form of dialogue references. Some raiders and settlers quote lines from famous films or television shows, though altered slightly to fit the setting. These small lines may go unnoticed by many, but for those who recognize them, they add a layer of humor. Bethesda often uses dialogue to plant subtle Easter eggs without drawing too much attention. The settlement system introduced in Fallout 4 also contains hidden jokes. Some decorative items, like lawn flamingos or oddly colored lamps, are references to mid-20th century American culture. Collecting and placing them can feel like building a museum of Easter eggs, each item tied to a piece of satire about consumerism. The system rewards creativity while also poking fun at the excesses of pre-war America. The Old Gullet sinkhole contains another subtle Easter egg. Exploring it reveals a series of skeletons and notes that suggest people attempted to hide during the war, only for the ground to swallow them. The sinkhole itself references real geological features around Massachusetts, blending fact with fiction. The discovery is eerie and memorable, functioning as a hidden story waiting for those who search deeply enough. There are also musical Easter eggs. The Diamond City radio station includes songs that reference nuclear themes, chosen deliberately to contrast with the cheerful tone of the music. Songs like Uranium Fever parody the optimism of atomic age culture. Hearing these tracks while wandering through ruins transforms the soundtrack itself into an Easter egg filled with irony and satire. Fallout 4's Easter eggs extend even into crafting. Some weapon mods or armor pieces are named after fictional technologies from past Fallout games, tying the series together. Players who pay attention to these names realize they are Easter eggs, linking Fallout 4 to its predecessors. These small details remind fans that the series is interconnected, with each entry building upon the last. The Commonwealth is a treasure chest of hidden nods, from skeleton jokes to literary references, from aliens to pulp comics, from sports history to Lovecraftian horror. Each one enriches the world, giving it depth beyond quests and battles. Players exploring late at night may stumble across a teddy bear with a cigar, a haunted museum, or a crashed UFO, and each moment becomes a personal discovery. These Easter eggs are what make Fallout 4 linger in memory, rewarding curiosity and turning ruins into stories. The Commonwealth continues to surprise, with layers of secrets that players uncover only after wandering for hours through its ruins. Fallout 4 is not only about fighting raiders and scavenging supplies, it is also about noticing the smallest details placed deliberately by the developers, each one telling a story or referencing something familiar from outside the wasteland. These Easter eggs are often hidden in plain sight, waiting for players to slow down and look carefully. One of the cleverest nods lies deep within the glowing sea. In this irradiated region, players can find a shack containing references to strange sightings of winged creatures. This is widely believed to be one of the earliest hints toward the Mothman, a legend that would later become central to Fallout 76. By planting this Easter egg early, Bethesda connected its worlds across games, rewarding players who paid attention to small clues. Another striking moment occurs at the Mass Fusion building. If players explore thoroughly, they will find skeletons arranged in corporate offices in ways that parody business culture. One skeleton sits slumped over a desk, surrounded by empty coffee cups, a joke about the grind of office work, even in the apocalypse. Another lies beneath a toppled stack of paperwork, as if buried by bureaucracy. These little setups are visual Easter eggs that poke fun at modern life through the lens of Fallout's ruined future. Another Easter egg involves the Boston Public Library. Within its dusty halls, players can find terminals that reference overdue books, with fines that have accumulated for centuries. The absurdity of still tracking fines 200 years after the bombs fell highlights Fallout's satire of bureaucracy. Collecting overdue books and returning them to a machine yields rewards, turning the gag into a functional system. It is a quiet joke that players participate in by treating overdue books as valuable loot. A fun nod to pop culture appears in the form of the weapon known as the junk jet. This device allows players to load random items like teddy bears, forks, or even alarm clocks as ammunition, firing them with deadly force. The junk jet is itself an Easter egg, parodying the idea of futuristic weaponry by turning trash into firepower. It is both a practical gun and a joke about scavenger survival. Watching raiders fall to a barrage of flying coffee cups is pure Fallout humor. Another memorable Easter egg is tied to the eerie location known as Jamaica Plain. Here, a vault filled with supposed treasures turns out to be a museum exhibit frozen in time. The so-called treasure is simply a collection of pre-war memorabilia, complete with banners proclaiming the value of culture and history. The joke is that Wastelanders expected piles of caps or technology, but instead found a glorified time capsule. This Easter egg functions as satire of misplaced values, mocking the idea of treasure by replacing it with nostalgia. Players exploring the Commonwealth may also stumble upon a nod to the real-world Salem witch trials. At the Museum of Witchcraft, the setup of a dark haunted house atmosphere leads to an encounter with a deathclaw. The museum is filled with eerie sounds, mannequins, and staged props, creating tension before the reveal. This location is not only a challenging fight, but also a cultural Easter egg, tying Fallout to Massachusetts history. Another clever inclusion can be found at Boston Common, where a swan boat sits idle. Near it lurks Swan, the super mutant behemoth disguised in a pond. Notes and skeletons nearby suggest Swan was once a prisoner transformed into a monster through cruel experiments. The entire encounter is an Easter egg combining folklore, monster movies, and Fallout's penchant for tragic backstories. Players with sharp eyes can find skeletons placed in humorous scenes that parody everyday life. One skeleton lies next to a bottle of whiskey and a typewriter, as if working late into the night before the end came. Another sits on a bench holding a bouquet of flowers, waiting endlessly for a date that never arrived. These skeletal jokes appear throughout the Commonwealth, forming one of Fallout 4's signature Easter egg styles. They are both grim and funny, showing how life froze in absurd moments at the instant of destruction. The questline involving the Cabot family is another rich source of hidden references. The idea of a wealthy Boston household sustained by an ancient artifact is both pulp adventure and satire of privilege. The family's longevity and eccentric behavior tie into themes of immortality and corruption. This Easter egg references classic tales of cursed objects while grounding them in Fallout's retrofuturism. Another location worth mentioning is the Cambridge Polymer Labs. Here, players encounter a robot receptionist who still insists on guiding them through a job interview process centuries after the bombs. The entire setup satirizes corporate culture, with players forced to complete tests and collect materials to finish a science experiment. It is an Easter egg, poking fun at job interviews and corporate science environments, exaggerated through the lens of the apocalypse. There are also numerous nods to classic pulp and adventure media through comic books and magazines. Grognak the Barbarian issues scattered across the Commonwealth parody sword and sorcery tales with over-the-top art. Tales of a Junktown jerky vendor highlight Fallout's humor about consumer goods. These collectible magazines are both functional and Easter eggs, tying the series back to its parody roots. The Railroad faction itself is an Easter egg referencing the historical Underground Railroad that helped enslaved people escape to freedom. In Fallout 4, the railroad uses similar imagery, coded lanterns, and secret tunnels to smuggle synths away from the Institute. This blending of real history with Fallout's fiction makes the railroad both a faction and a cultural Easter egg, rooting its identity in Boston's revolutionary past. One of the lighter nods appears when exploring random houses and finding teddy bears arranged in silly ways. A bear with sunglasses holding a plunger in a bathroom, or another driving a toy car, shows the developer's sense of humor. These teddy bear setups are not tied to quests, but became some of the most shared images among players, turning them into a recurring Easter egg theme. Another curious discovery lies within the glowing sea, where skeletal remains arranged in strange patterns suggest cult activity. Notes and environmental clues hint at rituals performed before the bombs fell. These details connect back to the Lovecraftian elements of Fallout 4, extending the Dunwich references into a broader theme of ancient horror lurking beneath radiation. This Easter egg rewards players who explore the most dangerous regions. Fallout 4 also includes nods to alien lore, continuing a series-wide tradition. The crashed UFO and alien blaster are the most obvious, but terminals in certain areas include references to government cover-ups and extraterrestrial sightings. These notes are Easter eggs that connect Fallout's nuclear paranoia with 20th century UFO hysteria. They add to the sense that the wasteland is shaped by forces beyond human understanding. Even the design of settlements can function as Easter eggs. Items like jukeboxes, neon signs, and garish decorations parody mid-century advertising culture. By allowing players to build their own spaces with these items, Bethesda essentially gave them the tools to recreate Easter eggs inside their settlements. The result is a wasteland where every player can craft their own little joke or tribute. Throughout the Commonwealth, the layering of horror, humor, and history continues. A skeleton in a bathtub with a toaster, a haunted museum echoing Salem's past, a family cursed by an ancient artifact, a crashed UFO leaving behind an alien pistol, a superhero parody quest, and teddy bears caught in absurd scenes. Each Easter egg adds to the feeling that Fallout 4 is not just a game about survival, but also a game about discovery. The Commonwealth is alive with stories, both tragic and funny, and the more players look, the more they find. One of the joys of exploring Fallout 4's Commonwealth is how many times the world rewards curiosity with something surprising. The map is filled with Easter eggs that range from humorous skeleton setups to deep lore references, and each discovery adds new texture to the wasteland. By the time players finish the main story, they often realize they have still only scratched the surface of hidden details. Part of the magic of Fallout 4 is that the more you look, the more you find. A particularly eerie Easter egg hides within the Dunwich Borer's quarry. As players descend into this mining site, they notice signs of strange rituals and unsettling visions. This is a direct continuation of Fallout 3's Dunwich building, both inspired by the works of writer Howard Phillips Lovecraft. The quarry includes visions of the past and whispers that suggest dark powers connected to pre-war cults. In one chamber, a sacrificial altar with skeletal remains confirms that this is no ordinary quarry. This Easter egg ties the Commonwealth to a larger mythos of supernatural horror, reminding players that radiation is not the only force shaping the wasteland. The Museum of Freedom in Concord is one of the earliest locations players visit, and it is filled with nods to American Revolutionary history. The setup itself is an Easter egg, parodying the romanticized version of history taught in museums. Costumes, mannequins, and dioramas of battles are staged around the building, and even after the bombs, the displays remain frozen in time. By staging the first major firefight of the game in such a location, Bethesda blends Fallout's fiction with real-world patriotic symbols, turning the Museum of Freedom into a living Easter egg. Exploring the Boston State House reveals another clever hidden detail. Beneath the ruined government building lies a skeleton still clutching an American flag. The scene appears to be a quiet tribute to patriotism enduring even through nuclear fire. For players who stumble upon it, this Easter egg is both somber and ironic, reminding them of the nation that once was. Another surprising Easter egg lies beneath Boston Common, where the ancient USS Constitution is found stranded on land. This 18th century warship has been retrofitted with rocket engines by a crew of Mr. Handy robots. The robots, still believing themselves to be naval officers, speak in archaic terms and salute the player. Completing the quest allows the ship to actually launch, sending it crashing into a skyscraper or sailing triumphantly away, depending on choices. The USS Constitution is not just a quest, it is an elaborate Easter egg that blends American history, absurd humor, and Fallout's love for retrofuturism. A nod to video game history appears through the hidden terminal entries and posters referencing other Bethesda franchises. In some cases, Skyrim jokes are tucked into the Commonwealth, connecting Fallout to Bethesda's wider universe. Players have reported finding copies of the Grognak comic styled similarly to fantasy tropes, which some interpret as a light parody of the Elder Scrolls series. These small touches are Easter eggs meant to amuse players who recognize Bethesda's other flagship franchise. The Charlesview Amphitheater is another location steeped in hidden meaning. Here, a cult of zealots worships the Hubologist faith, a returning parody of real-world fringe movements. This Easter egg is a callback to Fallout 2, where Hubologists first appeared as a satirical take on pseudo-religious organizations. By including them in Fallout 4, Bethesda connects the modern game to its classic predecessors, while also adding humor to the Commonwealth. One of the stranger Easter eggs involves the Pikmin Gallery, a location filled with gruesome artwork and messages. The gallery is a tribute to the Lovecraft short story Pikmin's Model, and the character of Pikmin himself is a twisted artist inspired by the tale. Exploring the gallery reveals blood-drenched paintings, hidden passages, and trophies from raiders Pikmin has killed. This Easter egg is both horror reference and gameplay, blending Fallout's violent world with literary inspiration. The Mass Pike interchange hides a skeleton dressed in a racing outfit next to a crashed motorcycle. This is a nod to Evel Knievel and Daredevil culture, showing how Fallout sneaks real-world icons into its wasteland. The skeleton's placement suggests a failed stunt, frozen forever at the moment of disaster, another of Fallout 4's humorous but grim skeletal jokes. In the town of Salem, aside from the Museum of Witchcraft, players may encounter subtle references to New England folklore and legends. Notes and environmental storytelling connect the area to tales of witchcraft, cults, and superstition. The Easter egg here lies in the blending of Fallout's science fiction with real historical fear, making Salem both familiar and uncanny. Another notable Easter egg is the reference to Edgar Allan Poe. In a ruined house, players can find a raven perched next to a skeleton holding a copy of a book. The scene clearly references Poe's famous poem, The Raven, turning a small environmental setup into a literary nod. Fallout 4's designers often use these small props to tie in classic works of horror and literature, rewarding players who recognize them. There are also countless nods to pop culture scattered across the Commonwealth. For instance, a hidden cave contains a skeleton in a fedora alongside a whip, an obvious reference to Indiana Jones. Another location shows a man lying crushed beneath a safe that fell from above, parodying slapstick humor. These sight gags add levity to the wasteland, reminding players that Fallout's darkness is always balanced with absurd comedy. Even within vaults, Fallout 4 hides references. Vault 81, which players can access through a quest, mirrors some of the social experiments found in older games. Its storylines reference both Fallout 3 and New Vegas, serving as Easter eggs for longtime fans. The smaller details of its experiments and the way the vault functions are nods to the legacy of Vault-Tech's sinister designs. The town of Diamond City itself is layered with Easter eggs. Built within the ruins of Fenway Park, it features stands, dugouts, and baseball memorabilia turned into homes and shops. Players can speak to NPCs who have strange and inaccurate ideas about how baseball was once played. The joke here is that the sport has been misremembered over centuries, with residents believing it was a violent gladiatorial game. This Easter egg parodies how history can become distorted in oral traditions. The quest involving Nick Valentine, the synth detective, is also full of Easter egg references to noir films. His dialogue, trench coat, and narrative style all parody classic detective stories. Fallout 4 leans into this aesthetic heavily during his quests, turning his character into a walking Easter egg, celebrating pulp detective fiction. The Corvega assembly plant contains nods to car culture, with skeletal remains of workers arranged as if still attempting to finish their shifts. This is an Easter egg poking fun at industry continuing even at the edge of destruction. The Corvega brand itself is a parody of real-world automobile companies, and seeing its factory in ruins drives the joke home. The Atomic Cats, a gang of greaser-styled mechanics, are an Easter egg referencing mid-20th century youth subcultures. Their outfits, slang, and obsession with cars parody the rockabilly era, blending retro culture with Fallout's apocalyptic future. The Atomic Cats add style and humor to the wasteland, reminding players that subcultures endure even after the end of civilization. Another hidden gem appears at Walden Pond, where a reference to Henry David Thoreau awaits. Exploring the area reveals his cabin, complete with props that nod to his book Walden. This Easter egg ties Fallout to classic American literature, blending philosophy about nature and solitude with the game's desolate wilderness. Players can also find skeletons holding lunchboxes in humorous scenes, often filled with random loot. The Vault-Tec lunchbox itself is a recurring Easter egg, serving as a collectible that opens with cheerful confetti even in the bleakest environments. This joke captures Fallout's essence, grim survival with a burst of ironic cheer. Throughout the Commonwealth, Easter eggs reflect Bethesda's playful design. A superhero parody quest involving the Silver Shroud, a horror tribute to Lovecraft, a philosophical nod to Thoreau, cults inspired by fringe religions, and teddy bears placed in absurd positions. Fallout 4's world is filled with secrets that ensure exploration is always rewarding. Each hidden detail tells a story, connecting the wasteland not only to its own lore, but also to the broader history of culture, literature, and comedy. By the time players have seen all of these Easter eggs, they realize Fallout 4 is as much about storytelling and silence as it is about quests. The small scenes, the little jokes, the skeletons posed in ridiculous positions, the hidden notes in terminals, and the cultural references layered into locations all create a world that feels alive, even centuries after its collapse. The Commonwealth is not just a stage for combat, but a museum of hidden stories waiting to be uncovered. The Mojave Desert in Fallout New Vegas is one of the richest landscapes for hidden Easter eggs. Unlike some games where secrets feel like small throwaway gags, here they often tie into the history of Fallout itself or into broader cultural references. New Vegas was crafted by many of the original developers of the early Fallout titles, so the Mojave is filled with callbacks and tributes that longtime fans recognize immediately. Even new players, however, discover countless strange moments, quirky details, and hidden nods while wandering the desert. One of the most famous Easter eggs sits in Good Springs, the first settlement encountered. Near the cemetery where the courier is buried, there are tombstones with humorous epitaphs. Some reference game developers or contain inside jokes about the player's fate. One stone in particular seems to foreshadow the courier's survival, adding a layer of dark humor to the game's opening moments. This graveyard sets the tone for the Mojave, where even death is framed with irony and hidden meaning. Not far from Good Springs lies the character Victor, the robot cowboy who rescues the courier. Victor's design itself is an Easter egg inspired by retro cowboy imagery and old westerns. His voice and mannerisms play into this theme, creating a deliberate connection between the Mojave and the myth of the American frontier. New Vegas is built on Western motifs, and Victor's presence is a tongue-in-cheek reminder that even in a nuclear wasteland, the cowboy never truly dies. The small settlement of Novak hides another memorable Easter egg. The giant dinosaur statue, known as Dinky the Dinosaur, is a parody of roadside attractions common in mid-20th century America. Dinky is based on real-world tourist traps, where oversized statues lured travelers to gift shops. In the game, this kitschy landmark becomes a sniper's nest and a hub for quests. The joke is that something so silly becomes so central to survival. Inside Dinky's mouth, players find Boone, the haunted sniper companion. His presence is serious and tragic, but the setting itself is comic, blending absurd Americana with heavy storytelling. This combination is an Easter egg in its own right, showing Fallout's ability to contrast humor and despair in a single space. In Nipton, the town where Caesar's Legion commits a massacre, players may stumble on lottery tickets scattered across the ground. Survivors mention a lottery where the winners were executed or enslaved, except for one man who lived. The dark humor of this scene recalls Fallout's tradition of cruel ironies. The Easter egg here is not a pop culture nod, but a grim narrative joke. Sometimes winning is the worst outcome. Moving deeper into the Mojave, one of the strangest Easter eggs involves the crashed UFOs. Outside of Area 51-styled locations, players can find wrecked flying saucers, alien corpses, and alien blaster weapons. This tradition began in earlier Fallout games, and New Vegas continues it as a nod to both Roswell myths and the series' history of extraterrestrial jokes. The alien blaster itself is a unique weapon, appearing across multiple Fallout titles as one of the most consistent Easter eggs in the series. At Camp Golf, players encounter soldiers known as the Misfits. Their names and personalities reference the characters from the war film The Dirty Dozen, a story about misfit soldiers forced to work together. This Easter egg turns a serious film into parody within Fallout's setting, showing how pop culture is reinterpreted in the wasteland. Players who recognize the reference appreciate the layered humor of seeing a gritty war movie echoed through awkward soldiers stationed by a lake. One of the most elaborate Easter eggs lies in Vault 11. The Vault's story revolves around an annual election where residents must sacrifice one person to keep the vault operational. Over time, Paranoia and cruelty consume the population. When the player uncovers the truth, it is revealed that the sacrifice was never required. The vault was a morality test. This vault is not just a quest, but an Easter egg referencing real-world psychological experiments about obedience and morality, echoing works like the Milgram experiment. It is one of Fallout's darkest hidden stories, delivered through environmental storytelling. The New Vegas Strip itself contains several Easter eggs. One of the most subtle is the Lucky 38 Casino, which is shaped after the Stratosphere Tower in Las Vegas. The number 38 is a reference to roulette wheels, which have 38 slots in American versions. This nod to gambling math shows how Obsidian paid attention to the smallest details when designing the strip. Nearby, the Ultra-Luxe Casino hides one of the most infamous Easter eggs, the White Glove Society's cannibalistic traditions. Players who dig into the quest beyond the beef uncover that the group once practiced cannibalism and may attempt to return to it. The Easter egg is a parody of upper-class decadence, taking the stereotype of elite corruption to its gruesome extreme. It is a darkly comic nod to both real-world scandals and Fallout's taste for satire. Another hidden reference appears in Freeside, where the King's Gang operates. Their leader, simply known as the King, is an Elvis Presley impersonator. His mannerisms, outfit, and voice are all deliberate references to Elvis culture. The Easter egg here is that in Fallout's post-apocalyptic future, Elvis fandom has become a full-fledged gang culture. This parody of obsession with celebrity is both absurd and fitting, showing how myth can become power in the wasteland. The Repcon test site contains another alien reference. Here, a group of ghouls led by Jason Bright believes they will ascend into space. The quest, Come Fly With Me, has the player help them repair rockets, culminating in a rocket launch sequence. The Easter egg is a parody of cults and UFO believers, tying in both Fallout's alien tradition and real-world fringe movements. It is one of the most memorable quests in the game, blending humor, tragedy, and science fiction all at once. Hidden in the Mojave are several graves and skeleton setups that parody famous movie scenes. For example, a skeleton in a refrigerator references the controversial scene in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, where the hero survives a nuclear blast by hiding in a fridge. This Easter egg mocks the implausibility of the film, while also fitting perfectly into Fallout's nuclear theme. Players who stumble upon it often laugh at the absurdity of seeing the joke literalized in the wasteland. The NCR Correctional Facility, overrun by powder gangers, contains several subtle nods to Shawshank Redemption. The setup of the prison, along with notes about escape attempts, echoes the film's story about prison life and escape. Fallout's Easter eggs often take the form of environmental parodies like this, hidden in notes, props, or arrangements of skeletons. Scattered around the Mojave are sunset sarsaparilla star bottle caps, which serve as an Easter egg quest referencing collectible culture. Players who gather enough caps eventually unlock a hidden stash, but the journey is filled with humor about how pointless obsessive collecting can be. This quest parodies real-life collectors' obsessions while rewarding players who embrace the absurd challenge. Another location worth mentioning is the Sierra Madre, introduced in the Dead Money expansion. The entire casino is an Easter egg for themes of greed and obsession. Its story, involving characters trapped by their desires, references countless heist and ghost stories. The phrase, "begin again, but know when to let go," becomes the heart of the Easter egg, a parable hidden within a survival horror setting. In Honest Hearts, the burned man Joshua Graham is introduced, a character first mentioned in Fallout 2. His survival after being set on fire and thrown into the Grand Canyon is itself an Easter egg reference to pulp Western tropes of men who cannot be killed. Graham embodies the myth of the indestructible frontier survivor, a joke layered with tragedy and religious symbolism. The Old World Blues expansion is practically an entire game of Easter eggs. The think tank scientists are caricatures of pulp science fiction, complete with absurd experiments and melodramatic dialogue. References to B-movies, mad scientist tropes, and retrofuturism permeate the experience. The player's own brain being removed and placed into a jar is one of Fallout's strangest gags, turning a science fiction cliché into a playable event. In Lonesome Road, Ulysses references the American flag and lost ideals throughout his dialogue. The Easter egg lies in the way his words echo real historical debates about American identity, tying Fallout's fiction to real political philosophy. Lonesome Road itself is structured as a mythic confrontation filled with references to Cold War anxieties. Beyond the expansions, New Vegas hides dozens of smaller sight gags. Skeletons posed as if playing poker, teddy bears placed in bathtubs or beds, and humorous terminal entries all contribute to the Easter egg culture. One skeleton holds a pool cue with balls neatly arranged, frozen in mid-game. Another is crushed beneath a piano, parodying slapstick comedy. These moments are reminders that even in the Mojave's bleakness, humor thrives. One of the most touching Easter eggs involves the followers of the apocalypse. In their base, players can find references to earlier Fallout characters, tying New Vegas back to Fallout 2. These connections remind players that the Mojave is not an isolated story, but part of a living, connected wasteland filled with echoes of the past. The Mojave Wasteland is full of these hidden treasures, ranging from subtle literary references to overt parodies of pop culture. Each Easter egg adds personality to the game, making exploration feel rewarding even when no quest is involved. For players who take the time to wander and look closely, New Vegas offers more Easter eggs than nearly any other Fallout entry, cementing its reputation as one of the richest games in the series for secrets. When exploring Fallout New Vegas, players quickly realize that its Easter eggs are not just random jokes, but layered pieces of commentary woven into the Mojave itself. The desert is filled with strange sights, hidden encounters, and nods to earlier Fallout titles, as well as cultural references that give the world texture. Every corner seems to hold something unusual, making the Mojave a wasteland of both danger and delight for those who look closely. One of the standout examples is the quest known as Come Fly With Me, centered on the REPCONN test site. Jason Bright, a glowing ghoul who leads the Bright Brotherhood, believes that he and his fellow ghouls will ascend to the stars. This quest is filled with humor, but it is also an Easter egg referencing real-world cults, particularly those tied to UFOs and space travel promises. The absurdity of ghouls building rockets, paired with the haunting sense that this is their only hope for salvation, creates a scene that is both funny and tragic. Players who recognize the satire see it as a commentary on desperation and belief systems wrapped in a sci-fi joke about rockets and aliens. The Mojave is also home to several nods to the earlier Fallout games. One of the most famous is Marcus, the super mutant companion who first appeared in Fallout 2. In New Vegas, Marcus has become the sheriff of Jacobstown, a community for super mutants and nightkin. His presence is an Easter egg for longtime fans, showing the continuity of Fallout's world and rewarding players who remember his earlier role as a companion. Jacobstown itself is filled with subtle Easter eggs, including references to the Master's army and the long struggle of the Nightkin with Stealth Boy addiction. Vaults in New Vegas are also rich with Easter eggs. Vault 22, for example, houses an experiment with plants that turned into a nightmare of spores and hostile vegetation. The design of the vault, filled with overgrown greenery, serves as an environmental Easter egg referencing classic horror stories about nature reclaiming humanity. The tale echoes works like Day of the Triffids, where plants themselves become predators. Players exploring Vault 22 often feel the blend of science fiction homage and Fallout horror that defines so many of the series' best secrets. Vault 34 is another vault filled with hidden meaning. It is infamous for being overstocked with weapons, leading to a violent population that eventually destroyed itself. This story acts as a satirical Easter egg about the dangers of unchecked weapon hoarding. In a broader sense, Vault 34 parodies debates over gun culture, exaggerated through Fallout's lens. It also rewards exploration with access to the All-American Rifle, a unique weapon whose very name is a sly Easter egg about national identity and weaponry. In Vault 11, as mentioned before, the morality test of annual sacrifices is one of the darkest Easter eggs in the game. The final reveal that no sacrifice was ever needed is devastating. What makes this even more of an Easter egg is the way it references the history of psychological experiments about obedience and group dynamics. It draws parallels to real-world studies like the Stanford Prison Experiment, using Fallout's setting to retell similar lessons in morality and human behavior. The courier can also find a strange cave filled with legendary fire geckos. Deep within this lair lies a skeleton wearing a checkered suit, holding a gun. This is a direct Easter egg to the courier's attempted execution at the start of the game. The implication is that Benny, the one who shot the courier, had tried to dispose of rivals or had connections with others in suits. It is a subtle nod to the story itself, buried in a dangerous cave that many players may never fully explore. Scattered across the Mojave are references to Elvis Presley fandom through the King's Gang in Freeside. The King, leader of the group, is styled as an Elvis impersonator, complete with voice, clothing, and mannerisms. The entire gang worships Elvis, treating him like a cultural icon turned prophet. This is an Easter egg parody of celebrity cults, where admiration becomes a literal gang identity. Players who recognize the Elvis imagery find humor in the absurdity of the wasteland, preserving fandom in such a strange form. A skeleton lying beneath a collapsed safe in the Mojave is another sight gag. The skeleton is crushed by the safe, suggesting that greed or desperation led to their demise. This darkly comic arrangement is an Easter egg about irony, a reminder that sometimes in Fallout, seeking treasure leads only to death. These environmental jokes are subtle but memorable, using props and positioning to tell entire stories without words. New Vegas also continues the Fallout tradition of alien encounters. Near Horowitz Farmstead, players may stumble upon a crashed UFO and alien corpses, along with the alien blaster weapon. This is a consistent Easter egg across Fallout games, nodding to Roswell myths and the larger cultural fascination with aliens. The fact that the Mojave contains its own alien crash site connects New Vegas back to earlier titles, reinforcing the idea that extraterrestrial jokes are part of Fallout's DNA. One of the quirkier Easter eggs is the Sunset Sarsaparilla Star Bottle Cap Challenge. players collect special bottle caps, often found in strange places or rewarded through quests. The eventual payoff is underwhelming, a stash of caps guarded by a madman, but the humor lies in the absurd obsession with collecting. This entire quest is an Easter egg poking fun at player behavior, especially the tendency to hoard rare items in RPGs. It also parodies real-life collector culture, where people chase after rare packaging or limited edition products, only to find little real value. The Dead Money expansion adds layers of hidden meaning. The Sierra Madre Casino is not only a haunting survival environment, but also an Easter egg about greed, obsession, and the allure of unattainable wealth. The story reflects themes from countless ghost tales and heist stories where characters are trapped by their own desires. Even the phrase, "begin again, but know when to let go," becomes an Easter egg mantra for both the story and the players, reminding them that clinging too tightly can destroy. Honest Hearts brings players to Zion Canyon, where tribal cultures thrive. One of the most notable Easter eggs is the character of Joshua Graham, also known as the Burned Man. First mentioned in Fallout 2, Graham's survival after being set on fire and thrown into the Grand Canyon is both absurd and mythic. This Easter egg references pulp Western traditions of indestructible men, while also embedding religious undertones. For players who remember his earlier mentions, seeing him alive is a satisfying callback to the series' deep lore. Old World Blues is, as many fans note, a massive Easter egg playground. The think tank scientists embody every mad scientist cliché from Pulp Fiction, complete with exaggerated dialogue and ridiculous experiments. Their robotic forms and melodrama parody decades of science fiction. The player's own brain being removed and placed into a jar is one of the strangest Easter eggs in the series, a literalization of a common sci-fi trope. Old World Blues thrives on this kind of absurd humor, where every interaction is a reference or a parody. Lonesome Road is more somber, but still contains its own Easter eggs. The antagonist Ulysses often references the American flag, the collapse of ideals, and lost symbols of unity. His words echo real historical debates, turning his dialogue into Easter eggs about political philosophy. The design of the Divide itself, a destroyed landscape of craters and ruins, is a reference to Cold War fears of mutually assured destruction. For players who pick up on the symbolism, the entire DLC becomes an extended Easter egg about the dangers of pride and nationalism. Smaller Easter eggs dot the Mojave in less obvious ways. Skeletons arranged around campfires or poker tables tell silent stories. Teddy bears placed in humorous poses, sitting on toilets, holding guns, or lounging in beds, act as Fallout's light-hearted signature joke. These teddy bear placements are scattered across multiple Fallout games, but New Vegas adds its own versions, reminding players that even in the bleakest world, there is room for levity. Another Easter egg lies in the presence of the unique weapon, Euclid's Seafinder. This gun can call down an orbital laser strike if the player aligns with the right faction. The absurdity of a single weapon linked to a satellite laser is both powerful and humorous. It references both science fiction superweapons and the exaggeration of comic book gadgets, fitting neatly into Fallout's tradition of turning cliches into gameplay tools. The Mojave also contains nods to Monty Python, a tradition dating back to earlier Fallout titles. Random encounters and dialogue sometimes reference the famous knights who say "knee" or other sketches, embedding British comedy into the wasteland. These nods are often hidden in throwaway lines or obscure locations, making them true Easter eggs for those who pay attention. One of the more haunting Easter eggs involves Vault 21, a vault where disputes were settled by gambling. This premise itself is a parody of Las Vegas culture, reducing serious decisions to games of chance. When the vault is uncovered, its residents are long gone, and the vault has been converted into a hotel. The Easter egg lies in the absurdity of an entire society run by dice rolls, fitting for the city of luck and chance. Even the Hoover Dam, central to the game's story, contains its own Easter eggs. Terminals scattered around the dam reference real-world engineering feats and parodies of bureaucratic paperwork. The dam is treated both as a serious battleground and as a backdrop for jokes about maintenance logs and complaints. This blending of gravity and humor makes even the centerpiece of New Vegas into a playground for hidden gags. Finally, players can discover subtle nods to real Las Vegas legends. Neon signs, ruined casinos, and strange stories scattered around the Strip reflect actual myths from Nevada's gambling history. Obsidian wove these references in carefully, turning the Mojave into a distorted mirror of the real city. The result is that every Easter egg feels grounded, even when it veers into absurdity. Fallout New Vegas thrives on its Easter eggs, from overt parodies to subtle world-building jokes. Each one rewards players who explore deeply and think critically, while still offering humor to casual wanderers. The Mojave's Easter eggs are not just random gags, they are part of its identity, ensuring that every playthrough feels alive with discovery. The Mojave Wasteland is designed as both a stage for narrative choices and a gallery of hidden details, with Fallout New Vegas containing some of the richest Easter eggs in the franchise. From pop culture nods to callbacks to earlier Fallout titles, nearly every location has a story to tell if the player looks closely. By weaving humor, tragedy, and references together, Obsidian created an environment where exploration always feels rewarding. One of the most famous Easter eggs is the mysterious skeleton in the irradiated waste known as Camp Searchlight. Inside the church, a skeleton sits in a bathtub next to a bottle of wine and a pistol, seemingly having chosen to end life peacefully amid the devastation. This small scene is never explained, but it resonates with players, combining dark humor with tragedy. It reflects Fallout's theme of individuals meeting their end in ways that reveal quiet stories, and it mirrors earlier skeleton setups from Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. At the outskirts of Nipton, the player encounters a location filled with burned bodies and crucified victims left by Caesar's Legion. Among the victims is a powder ganger who survived, warning of the Legion's cruelty before being executed. This scene is not only a major story moment, it is also filled with hidden meaning, as the crucifixions act as a clear historical Easter egg, referencing the brutality of ancient Rome. The parallels between Caesar's Legion and its namesake civilization are made explicit here, using environmental design to hammer home the illusion. The Repcon headquarters contains multiple hidden jokes, terminals scattered throughout reference corporate bureaucracy, poor planning, and comical safety reports. Some entries describe employees struggling with rocket fuel experiments and safety violations, poking fun at corporate incompetence. The entire building acts as an Easter egg about failed companies, while also connecting to the Repcon rockets seen in earlier Fallout lore. For players who pay attention, even the posters and slogans scattered on the walls add humor by parodying real-world corporate culture. At the Aerotech Office Park, there is a subtle reference to the Great Depression era, with refugees living in tents and struggling for survival. This setup acts as an Easter egg about how history repeats itself. The placement of destitute citizens in a once thriving corporate park highlights the irony of economic collapse, connecting Fallout's world to real history. It is not a laugh out loud joke, but rather a quiet Easter egg about human resilience amid ruin. The Mojave Outpost features two massive statues of NCR soldiers shaking hands. This striking image is itself an Easter egg, representing both unity and propaganda. The handshake is exaggerated, with oversized statues built in a style reminiscent of mid-20th century monuments. The statues function as satire, a parody of how nations often exaggerate symbols of unity while ignoring fractures beneath the surface. It is a subtle Easter egg about politics and perception built right into the landscape. Scattered across the Mojave are teddy bears, a recurring series Easter egg. In New Vegas, players can find them in humorous setups, such as a teddy bear holding a pool cue at a billiard table, or another seated on a toilet reading. These jokes are consistent with Fallout's tradition of turning props into sight gags. The teddy bears are not just random placements, they are part of Fallout's identity, a silent reminder that levity persists in the bleakest settings. Another clever Easter egg lies in the shape of the map itself. Fans have noticed that the Mojave map mirrors real-world Nevada geography, with locations like New Vegas, Hoover Dam, and Good Springs placed in roughly accurate relation to their actual counterparts. This subtle accuracy acts as an Easter egg for players who know Nevada, making the game's world feel authentic while still warped by Fallout's alternate history. A particularly eerie Easter egg can be found in Vault 3, controlled by fiends. Exploring the vault reveals graffiti, improvised living spaces, and a society run by raiders. Hidden among the chaos is a skeleton posed as though it died defending itself, holding a holotape. The tape references previous vault experiments, tying Vault 3 into the larger Vault-Tec mythology. For players who piece it together, this vault becomes an Easter egg about continuity, showing that even a raider's stronghold cannot escape the shadow of Vault-Tec. The Mojave Drive-In is another location steeped in hidden meaning. At night, players can observe a strange glow in the sky above it, a reference to the upcoming Old World Blues DLC. This glow acts as both foreshadowing and an Easter egg, teasing the expansion before players even know what it is. The clever placement ensures that exploration itself becomes a way to preview content. In the Nellis Air Force Base, home of the Boomers, players find nods to mid-20th century military culture. The Boomers' obsession with heavy artillery is itself an Easter egg parody of America's fixation on military might. Their backstory, where they blew up anything that came near them until isolation became their way of life, is a comedic exaggeration of paranoid militarism. Even their quest, which involves restoring a bomber from Lake Mead, is an Easter egg about Cold War-era war machines and the nostalgia for technological dominance. The Thorn, an underground fighting arena in Westside, contains multiple references to gladiatorial combat. The way it is staged, with cheering crowds watching beasts fight, is an Easter egg parody of ancient Roman arenas. This ties back to Caesar's Legion thematically, reinforcing the game's exploration of history repeating itself. The Thorn's brutality is exaggerated, but the inspiration is clear, making it both disturbing and symbolic. New Vegas also sneaks in references to classic films. The King's Gang in Freeside, modeled after Elvis Presley impersonators, is one of the most obvious, but beyond that, small nods to westerns are scattered everywhere. The town of Good Springs mirrors the setup of many classic cowboy films, where a lone wanderer helps a town stand up to criminals. This entire narrative is an Easter egg about Western genre tropes, recast in Fallout's post-nuclear setting. Players wandering into the Black Mountain radio tower encounter Tabitha, a super mutant with her own eccentric radio show. This is both a gameplay challenge and an Easter egg about propaganda radio, parodying how isolationist figures often use broadcast power to control narratives. The absurdity of a super mutant running a talk show filled with rants and propaganda turns the encounter into a hidden joke layered with meaning. One of the stranger Easter eggs is the encounter with the giant ants at Boulder City. The size and ferocity of the ants parody old science fiction movies from the 1950s, particularly films like Them, where giant insects terrorized humanity. Fallout New Vegas embraces this tradition, blending pulp sci-fi into the Mojave's harsh realism. For players who recognize the genre reference, the giant ants become more than enemies. They are a tribute to pop culture history. Dead Money's Sierra Madre Casino contains multiple hidden Easter eggs beyond its haunting tone. The vending machines that dispense goods for Sierra Madre chips parody real-world slot machines, turning survival into a twisted gamble. Even the ghost people, wrapped in hazmat suits, act as an Easter egg about lost humanity, their eternal wandering reflecting myths of cursed treasure hunters. The entire DLC is structured like an extended Easter egg about obsession and greed, where the pursuit of wealth consumes all who seek it. Honest Hearts contains its own subtle nods. The Burned Man himself is a walking Easter egg, but so too are the tribal markings and references to old world missionaries. Notes scattered in Zion reference pre-war tourism, with postcards and signage parodying real-world national park advertising. This layering of Fallout fiction over real geography makes Zion feel like an Easter egg for players familiar with American travel history. Old World Blues, with its think tank, is overflowing with Easter eggs, each scientist embodying cliches. Their exaggerated voices parody everything from mad scientists in comic books to pulp serial villains. Even their obsession with removing and replacing body parts is an Easter egg about Frankenstein and classic horror tropes. Players who pay attention realize that the DLC is less about survival and more about satirizing decades of science fiction. Lonesome Road also ties in deeply to Fallout's past. Ulysses himself serves as an Easter egg, a character whose design pulls from multiple archetypes of lone wanderers in American storytelling. His obsession with symbols, flags, and lost identity references real historical debates, making his entire presence a hidden commentary. For players who explore deeply, even the ruined highways of the Divide are Easter eggs, representing the collapse of unity and the dangers of pride. Across all of New Vegas, small environmental jokes abound. A skeleton slumped over a poker table with a winning hand, a refrigerator with a teddy bear locked inside, or a shack with mannequins arranged in disturbing positions. These details are never part of quests, but they reward curiosity. Each one is an Easter egg about irony, humor, or horror, reminding players that the Mojave is alive with stories beyond the main narrative. Fallout New Vegas remains a treasure trove of hidden meaning. Its Easter eggs tie together history, literature, pop culture, and Fallout's own legacy, ensuring that exploration always feels worthwhile. Every vault, every town, and every ruin contains secrets that reward both newcomers and longtime fans. By blending humor, tragedy, and reference, the Mojave shows why Easter eggs are one of the most beloved aspects of Fallout's design. The Mojave Wasteland remains one of the richest environments in Fallout for secrets, with Easter eggs ranging from small visual gags to large narrative callbacks. What makes New Vegas stand out is how these Easter eggs never feel like filler. They are part of the texture of the desert, embedded naturally into the world, so players stumble upon them while wandering. The more time spent exploring, the clearer it becomes that the Mojave is a land shaped not just by nuclear fire, but by the imagination of developers who filled it with countless hidden details. A famous and unsettling Easter egg lies within the Sierra Madre Casino from the Dead Money expansion. The entire casino is designed as a monument to obsession, greed, and the inability to let go. The Easter eggs are not only in the dialogue or characters, but also in the smallest props. In one corner, a skeleton lies slumped over a slot machine, suggesting that even at the end of the world, someone could not stop pulling the lever. The vending machines that require Sierra Madre chips function as parodies of gambling machines, rewarding persistence with survival items instead of jackpots. Even the ghost people wandering the streets outside are Easter eggs about cursed treasure hunters condemned to stalk the ruins forever. Every detail reinforces the theme of greed turned fatal. In the Honest Hearts expansion, the burned man Joshua Graham himself acts as one of the most significant callbacks in Fallout history. First mentioned in Fallout 2, his survival story makes him a living Easter egg, tying the Mojave to earlier games. Beyond him, Zion Canyon is dotted with subtle references. Pre-war postcards advertise the canyon like a tourist trap, parodying mid-20th century marketing for national parks. Signs and brochures exaggerate the beauty of the land, now haunted by tribal conflicts and burned ruins. These details are Easter eggs about how nostalgia for nature survives, even when nature itself becomes a battlefield. The Old World Blues expansion is possibly the densest concentration of Easter eggs in Fallout New Vegas. The think tank scientists each parody pulp science fiction stereotypes with their disembodied brains and over-the-top voices referencing mad scientist characters from decades of comic books and B-movies. Their obsession with experimentation is so absurd that it becomes parody itself, an Easter egg about the excesses of science fiction tropes. The player's own brain being removed and stored in a jar is the ultimate gag, literalizing a cliché so thoroughly that it becomes a quest objective. Within Old World Blues, hidden notes and terminals also contain layered jokes. One terminal describes experiments with toaster technology, complete with a maniacal toaster that wants to burn the world. This talking appliance is one of the strangest Easter eggs in the entire Fallout series, a parody of both evil AI tropes and everyday household items turned sinister. Another device, the muggy robot, obsesses over collecting coffee cups. Its endless rants about mugs parody both hoarding behavior and the Fallout series' obsession with junk items. These tiny characters are Easter eggs built into companions, transforming parody into personality. The Lonesome Road expansion shifts tone, but still contains its own share of hidden references. The antagonist Ulysses constantly references flags, symbols, and lost national identity, turning his dialogue into a meditation on history. The Divide itself, scarred and broken, becomes an Easter egg about Cold War fears of nuclear war. Notes scattered around the ruins describe how one courier's actions triggered catastrophe, mirroring real-world anxieties about small choices leading to massive destruction. For players who listen closely, the entire DLC is a reflection of political philosophy hidden beneath the trappings of an RPG expansion. Back in the Mojave itself, players can encounter dozens of small visual Easter eggs. In one abandoned shack, a skeleton lies next to a teddy bear and a bottle, suggesting a parent trying to comfort a child at the end. In another location, mannequins are arranged in positions that suggest ritual or ceremony, creating a disturbing and unexplained image. These moments are not tied to quests, but act as environmental storytelling. Each one functions as an Easter egg about the countless unseen stories of the apocalypse. The Sunset Sarsaparilla Star Bottle Cap Challenge continues to act as a parody of collector culture. Players who obsessively gather the rare star caps eventually uncover a hidden chamber filled with treasure. Yet the reward is bittersweet, with notes revealing the tragedy of those who pursued the same quest before. This Easter egg is both a joke about obsessive gaming habits and a story about how greed drives people to ruin. The dual layers make it one of the most memorable secrets in New Vegas. One of the smaller but clever Easter eggs is the presence of skill magazines with parodic titles. Magazines like Tales of Chivalry parody romance pulp, while Grognak the Barbarian issues parody sword and sorcery comics. These magazines act as Easter eggs about mid-century American culture, which Fallout constantly lampoons. Their over-the-top covers and exaggerated promises mirror the absurdity of pre-war advertising. In the Mojave Outpost, the giant statues of NCR troopers shaking hands are not only propaganda, but also an Easter egg referencing real-world monuments. The statues parody the exaggerated national pride seen in mid-20th century art, particularly Soviet and American monuments designed to showcase unity and strength. By making them absurdly oversized and placing them in a crumbling desert outpost, New Vegas turns propaganda into parody. Another Easter egg comes in the form of weapon names. Guns like the Rat Slayer parody pulp detective novels, with names designed to sound dramatic and larger than life. The Euclid Seafinder weapon references Greek mathematician Euclid, a sly nod to geometry and lasers. Even the All-American Rifle's name acts as an Easter egg about patriotism tied to weaponry. These small naming choices show how deeply Easter eggs permeate the Mojave, not only in environments, but in equipment. The King's Gang, beyond their Elvis theme, also includes subtle nods to real-world fandoms. Their obsessive imitation of Elvis mirrors how subcultures sometimes elevate celebrity to near-religious levels. The Easter egg here is not just the impersonation, but the parody of how myths are formed around cultural icons. For players unfamiliar with Elvis fandom, the Kings may seem bizarre, but for those who know the culture, the parody is sharp and intentional. One eerie location is the Devil's Throat, a radioactive crater containing wrecked trucks and skeletons. Among the debris lies a mercenary bodyguard with a note about betrayal. This small story is an Easter egg about greed and treachery, echoing countless Western tales where partnerships end in violence. The setup mirrors classic desert shootouts and ambush stories, retold through environmental storytelling. Black Mountain Radio, controlled by Tabitha, is itself a massive Easter egg. The entire broadcast, with its eccentric rants and propaganda, parodies isolationist figures and fringe broadcasters from history. The humor lies in the absurdity of a super mutant running a station, blending Fallout's mutant lore with satire about real-world communication. For players who stop to listen, Tabitha's broadcasts become one of the funniest hidden gems in the game. A particularly strange Easter egg is found in Quarry Junction. The area is crawling with deathclaws, making it one of the most dangerous places in the Mojave. Hidden among the rocks are skeletal remains, and notes that reference past adventurers who thought they could tame or hunt the beasts. These Easter eggs act as cautionary tales, jokes about overconfidence that end in tragedy. They remind players that not every secret in Fallout leads to treasure, sometimes it leads to death. One of the most charming Easter eggs in New Vegas is the Wild Wasteland trait itself. Choosing this trait unlocks dozens of additional references, from alien encounters to movie parodies. Without the trait, many Easter eggs simply do not appear. This mechanic is itself an Easter egg, rewarding players who embrace absurdity by giving them access to even more hidden content. It blurs the line between gameplay choice and joke, making the Mojave feel even stranger. Scattered throughout the game are also subtle references to the developer's past work. Characters like Cass and her ties to Fallout 2's caravan trade, or Marcus linking back to classic super mutant lore, serve as callbacks. Even some location names echo earlier Fallout settings, acting as Easter eggs for players who know the series' history. These references ensure that New Vegas feels like both a continuation and a celebration of Fallout's roots. The Mojave Wasteland thrives on these secrets, big and small, from the absurd talking toaster in Old World Blues to the haunting morality tale of Vault 11, from Elvis impersonators ruling Freeside to skeletons crushed beneath safes. Every corner contains an Easter egg. For players who love exploration, New Vegas is a treasure chest that never feels empty, rewarding both lore fans and casual wanderers alike. Fallout 76 might be one of the most divisive games in the series, but it is also one of the richest when it comes to Easter eggs. Because it is set in West Virginia, Bethesda used the opportunity to draw from real folklore, local landmarks, and regional myths. The result is a wasteland filled with hidden references that tie Fallout's alternate history to the real culture of Appalachia. Exploring the hills, rivers, and towns reveals countless secrets, both funny and eerie, making 76 a surprisingly strong entry when it comes to hidden details. One of the most famous Easter eggs involves the Mothman. This creature is one of West Virginia's most iconic pieces of folklore, and in Fallout 76, it is brought to life in multiple ways. Players can encounter shrines dedicated to the Mothman, complete with candles, bones, and strange carvings. There are also random encounters where the Mothman itself appears, sometimes hostile and sometimes passive. The entire presence of this cryptid is an Easter egg about real local legend, connecting the game's fiction to actual myths. For fans of American folklore, seeing the Mothman rendered in Fallout style is one of the highlights of the game. Another cryptid brought into the wasteland is the Flatwoods Monster. In real West Virginia history, this creature was reported in the 1950s as a bizarre alien being with glowing eyes and a strange headpiece. Fallout 76 transforms the Flatwoods Monster into a rare encounter, where players may see it teleporting around, observing them. This is both a nod to UFO hysteria and a direct Easter egg referencing an event from West Virginia's past. By placing the Flatwoods Monster in the game, Bethesda gave players a way to step into a piece of real folklore. The Grafton Monster is another hidden gem. In West Virginia legend, this creature was described as a huge, hulking beast with no visible head. In Fallout 76, the Grafton Monster roams the area near Grafton itself, terrifying players with its size and power. This is a rare example where a game takes an obscure regional legend and turns it into a fully realized creature. For players exploring Appalachia, encountering the Grafton Monster is both a boss fight and an Easter egg about local ghost stories. The Wendigo is yet another Easter egg tied to folklore. Rooted in Native American legends, the Wendigo is a creature associated with greed and cannibalism. In Fallout 76, Wendigos are terrifying, skeletal monsters that haunt caves and ruined places. Their presence ties the game into deeper mythological traditions, turning folklore into gameplay. The use of the Wendigo is an Easter egg that connects Fallout not just to local culture, but also to indigenous stories, giving the game's world a haunting authenticity. Beyond creatures, Fallout 76 is filled with location-based Easter eggs. One of the most notable is Camden Park, a real-world amusement park in West Virginia. In the game, it appears as a decrepit carnival with mascots and rides fallen into ruin. The mascot, Smiling Sam, is both eerie and funny, with his unsettling grin frozen forever. The entire park acts as an Easter egg about Americana, parodying the decay of small-town theme parks, while also nodding to a real place players could visit outside the game. The Greenbrier Resort, known in the game as the White Spring Resort, is another major Easter egg. In real life, the Greenbrier contained a secret Cold War bunker meant to house the U.S. government in case of nuclear war. Fallout 76 mirrors this history by making the White Spring Resort a place with hidden bunkers and advanced security systems. This is one of the most historically rooted Easter eggs in the game, blending real-world Cold War paranoia with Fallout's nuclear fiction. Players exploring the White Spring discover that reality itself inspired one of Fallout's richest locations. Another real-world reference appears in the New River Gorge Bridge. This massive steel arch bridge is faithfully recreated in Fallout 76, towering over the river below. The bridge is famous for an event called Bridge Day, where people base jump from its heights. Bethesda included notes and skeletons at the top of the bridge, referencing daredevils who may have tried similar stunts before the war. This is an Easter egg about West Virginia's culture of thrill-seeking, transformed into dark Fallout humor. Players exploring Charleston can find references to the real-world history of coal mining in West Virginia. Notes and environmental clues describe strikes, mining accidents, and the struggles of workers. While not overt jokes, these are Easter eggs that connect Fallout's Appalachia to real history, grounding the fiction in recognizable cultural struggles. For players from the region, these nods make the wasteland feel more personal and authentic. The game also includes multiple Easter eggs referencing Fallout's broader universe. One is the crashed UFO, a tradition that has appeared in nearly every Fallout game. In 76, players can find alien corpses and technology, continuing the joke of extraterrestrial involvement in the wasteland. Another is the presence of Vault Boy cutouts, arranged in humorous positions, acting as sight gags throughout Appalachia. These Vault Boy Easter eggs parody propaganda by showing the mascot in absurd scenarios. A particularly funny Easter egg involves the giant teapot in Chester, West Virginia. In real life, Chester is home to the world's largest teapot, and Bethesda recreated it in Fallout 76. The oversized roadside attraction is both accurate and absurd, fitting perfectly into Fallout's love for kitschy Americana. For players, stumbling upon the giant teapot is both surreal and delightful, a reminder that even landmarks can become Easter eggs. The in-game town of Point Pleasant is another treasure. Known in real life as the supposed home of the Mothman sightings, it is filled with references to that legend. Shrines, cultists, and clues about the Mothman's influence are scattered throughout the town. This location is essentially an extended Easter egg, blending Fallout fiction with real-world myth. Players who know West Virginia folklore immediately recognize Point Pleasant as the epicenter of the Mothman story. Another nod to history is found in the town of Harper's Ferry. In real life, Harper's Ferry was the site of John Brown's raid, an event that helped spark the American Civil War. In Fallout 76, Harper's Ferry appears as a ruined battleground filled with mutants and raiders. The setting itself acts as an Easter egg about American history, tying the wasteland back to real conflicts over freedom and survival. Fallout 76 also includes countless smaller Easter eggs. Teddy bears arranged in humorous ways continue to appear, keeping the series' tradition alive. Some are seated at dinner tables, others ride toy rockets, and a few even wear hats. These teddy bear setups are among the most beloved Easter eggs, providing levity amid Appalachia's gloom. In the hills of Appalachia, players can find strange skeleton setups that parody famous scenes. One skeleton is posed as if fishing, with a rod still in its hands, while another sits slumped in a rocking chair on a porch. These tiny setups act as jokes, turning the remains of pre-war life into comedic snapshots. The cryptid Easter eggs remain the highlight of Fallout 76. Encounters with creatures like the Snallygaster, based on a Maryland legend, expand the range of folklore included in the game. The Snallygaster appears as a grotesque, mutated beast with multiple tongues and claws, a far cry from its mythological description, but still rooted in local lore. Its inclusion shows Bethesda's commitment to drawing from real regional myths to enrich Appalachia. Overall, Fallout 76 thrives on Easter eggs that tie the wasteland to the real world. By blending West Virginia's folklore, history, and landmarks into the game, Bethesda created a unique kind of authenticity. The Mothman, the Flatwoods Monster, the Grafton Monster, the Wendigo, the White Spring Resort, Camden Park, the New River Gorge Bridge, and countless smaller details make Appalachia feel alive with secrets. For players who enjoy exploration, these Easter eggs transform 76 into a playground of discovery, rewarding curiosity with culture, myth, and humor. Fallout 76's Appalachian Wasteland is one of the most unusual settings in the franchise because it leans so heavily into real-world folklore and local culture for its Easter eggs. While earlier games tended to scatter skeleton gags, pop culture nods, and nods to earlier Fallout entries, 76 makes Easter eggs a core part of its identity. Every region of Appalachia seems to contain something either rooted in West Virginia's history or pulled from American myth, making exploration consistently rewarding. One of the most chilling Easter eggs in the game is the story of the Mothman cult. Throughout Appalachia, shrines to the creature can be found, adorned with candles, bones, and strange carvings. At night, players may encounter robed cultists chanting in the woods, worshipping the Mothman as a godlike figure. This setup turns local folklore into a full in-game religion, complete with rituals and lore. It is an Easter egg that both honors and satirizes real-world cult behavior, blending myth with Fallout's trademark dark humor. The Wendigo Colossus is another terrifying Easter egg. Introduced in later updates, this massive monster expands on the Wendigo myth with a more grotesque and exaggerated design. Its appearance during nuclear blast zones makes it even more unsettling, as players must fight it in chaotic, high-level battles. This creature is both a gameplay challenge and a cultural Easter egg, taking folklore about cannibalism and greed to an extreme. The way it towers above players emphasizes how Fallout can turn myth into spectacle. In addition to cryptids, Appalachia includes Easter eggs tied to Americana and kitsch. The Palace of the Winding Path, for example, is a strange religious retreat filled with meditating figures and eerie ambiance. This location parodies both real-world spiritual retreats and Fallout's own fascination with fringe beliefs. Exploring it reveals notes and sermons that mix pseudo-spirituality with Fallout's dark humor. The palace is less about combat and more about atmosphere, functioning as a hidden joke about how people cling to strange beliefs in desperate times. Another cultural Easter egg appears in the town of Helvetia, which hosts a holiday event known as Fastnacht. This is directly inspired by a real West Virginia tradition where people don elaborate masks to celebrate the end of winter. In the game, players can participate in the Fastnacht parade, escorting robots wearing strange masks through town. The event is both festive and unsettling, turning a real festival into a Fallout event. This blending of real and fictional traditions is one of the game's most creative Easter eggs. The Kanawha Nuka-Cola plant hides multiple Easter eggs. Players can find unique flavors of Nuka-Cola, as well as terminals filled with humorous corporate memos. Some describe absurd marketing campaigns or failures in product design, parodying real-world corporate excess. One memo even references a failed idea for Nuka-Cola's flavor experiments, poking fun at the ridiculous variety of sodas in real life. The plant serves as both a gameplay space and a satire of brand obsession, an Easter egg about consumer culture frozen in time. Appalachia also contains a faithful recreation of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, here called the Fort Defiance Asylum. This real West Virginia landmark has a reputation for being haunted, and Bethesda leaned into that history. In-game, Fort Defiance is filled with eerie sounds, dark hallways, and hostile enemies, creating a horror experience. The location itself is an Easter egg about real paranormal tourism, turning an actual landmark into a Fallout haunted house. The New River Gorge Bridge also contains a hidden nod to thrill seekers. Skeletons can be found at the base of the bridge, implying that someone attempted a jump and failed. Notes and props nearby reference Bridge Day, when real West Virginians gather to base jump from the structure. The Easter egg is darkly funny, showing how even in the wasteland, some dared to try stunts with fatal consequences. Another landmark recreated in Appalachia is the giant teapot in Chester. The teapot itself serves no functional purpose, but its presence is an Easter egg about the odd roadside attractions of mid-20th century America. Fallout has always parodied Americana, and the teapot fits perfectly, reminding players that kitsch can outlast even nuclear war. The Camden Park amusement park is filled with jokes as well. Mascot figures, decaying rides, and broken carnival games all parody small-town amusement parks. One of the most unsettling details is the Smiling Sam mascot costume, which players can collect and wear. The exaggerated grin of the mascot has become one of the game's creepiest images, an Easter egg about how cheerful imagery becomes terrifying when frozen in ruin. Appalachia also features the town of Point Pleasant, the epicenter of Mothman mythology. Here, players find shrines, notes, and cultists dedicated to the creature. Statues and murals throughout the town honor the Mothman, blending real folklore with Fallout fiction. This town functions as one massive Easter egg, effectively transforming the entire Mothman story into an explorable space. Another subtle reference comes from the various train stations scattered across Appalachia. Many of them include small visual jokes, such as skeletons sitting patiently on benches or clutching tickets, as if still waiting centuries after the bombs. These setups parody the monotony of travel and bureaucracy, turning waiting rooms into absurd comedy scenes. The train stations themselves are Easter eggs about the persistence of routine, even after the end of the world. Players can also find Easter eggs in holotapes scattered across the map. Some reference popular culture in Fallout's alternate history, while others parody real-world radio shows and advertisements. One holotape features an overly dramatic soap opera-style performance, a joke about pre-war entertainment. Another includes a parody of survival advice, mocking both propaganda and self-help culture. These audio Easter eggs add levity to exploration, rewarding players who collect them. A hidden nod to Fallout's past can be found in Vault 51, originally part of the game's Nuclear Winter mode. This vault included an overseer selection system parodying reality television competitions, with residents forced to compete for leadership. The vault was an Easter egg about both Fallout's own vault experiment, tradition, and modern media culture. Although Nuclear Winter was later removed, Vault 51 remains one of the game's strangest and most memorable secrets. Another cryptid Easter egg involves the sheep squatch, based on Appalachian folklore of a woolly beast. In Fallout 76, players can encounter the sheep squatch through events and quests, battling a bizarre creature that mixes sheep-like features with monstrous power. The very existence of such a creature is an Easter egg about how folklore can be twisted into Fallout's mutated style. For many players, the Sheep Squatch questline is one of the highlights of exploring Appalachia. In Harper's Ferry, the historical reference is clear. The site of John Brown's raid during the Civil War is transformed into a battleground filled with mutants and raiders. Notes and environmental storytelling tie the ruined town to its real past, making the location itself an Easter egg. Players familiar with history recognize the significance, while others experience it simply as another layered Fallout location. Appalachia also includes smaller hidden nods that reward close observation. A skeleton sitting with a banjo by a campfire acts as a quiet joke about West Virginia's musical traditions. Another skeleton lies next to a still, referencing the region's moonshining culture. These tiny details are Easter eggs that tie the game world to stereotypes and realities of Appalachian life, blending humor and authenticity. The use of real folklore continues with the Grafton Monster, Flatwoods Monster, Snallygaster, and Wendigo. Each one connects Fallout 76 to actual West Virginia legends, making the wasteland feel like a bestiary of American myth. By turning cryptids into fully realized creatures, Bethesda ensured that Easter eggs were not just static props, but living, breathing challenges. These cryptid encounters elevate 76, transforming folklore into gameplay. Fallout 76 may not have been universally praised, but when it comes to Easter eggs, it is unmatched. The fusion of real West Virginia culture with Fallout's alternate history created a world where every landmark, creature, and story has hidden meaning. Whether discovering the Mothman cult, battling the Sheep Squatch, or exploring Camden Park, players constantly stumble on secrets. These Easter eggs turn Appalachia into one of the most distinct wastelands in the entire series, rewarding curiosity with humor, horror, and cultural references. Fallout 3's Capital Wasteland is remembered not just for its story of searching for a missing father, but also for the sheer number of Easter eggs hidden throughout the ruins of Washington, D.C., and its surrounding areas. These secrets range from subtle references to popular culture to callbacks to earlier Fallout games. The developers at Bethesda filled the world with small details that reward careful exploration, turning even a ruined alleyway or crumbling office into a stage for discovery. One of the most famous Easter eggs in Fallout 3 is the hidden encounter with the alien crash site. Northeast of the Capital Wasteland, players can stumble upon a crashed flying saucer with the corpse of an alien and the unique alien blaster weapon. This discovery ties directly into Fallout's long-running tradition of alien jokes, first appearing in earlier games and later repeated in Fallout 4 and 76. The crash site became so iconic that it inspired later alien-related content in the franchise, making it one of Fallout's most consistent Easter eggs. Another memorable Easter egg lies in the Dunwich Building, a crumbling office structure filled with eerie noises, visions, and ghouls. As players explore, they find journals describing strange rituals and sacrifices, culminating in an encounter with powerful enemies. The Dunwich Building is an extended reference to the works of author Howard Phillips Lovecraft, particularly his story, The Dunwich Horror. It represents Bethesda's first major attempt to blend Fallout with supernatural horror themes, creating a location that is both terrifying and fascinating. The Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. is another example of Fallout 3's Easter eggs. The monument itself appears in the game, and players can undertake a quest to restore it by removing super mutants and hiring guards. The entire quest acts as an Easter egg about patriotism, memory, and the preservation of symbols. The ability to influence whether the monument is restored respectfully or exploited for profit also adds satire to the Easter egg, reflecting Fallout's humor about politics and history. Exploring the Museum of History reveals another set of hidden references. Within the museum lies Underworld, a community of ghouls who have taken up residence among the exhibits. This setting acts as an Easter egg about how the marginalized of Fallout society reclaim spaces meant to tell human history. The irony of ghouls living in a museum about humanity is intentional, turning the entire community into a piece of dark comedy. Another small but clever Easter egg is found in the Republic of Dave, a settlement run by a man named Dave who claims to be the leader of a new independent nation. The absurdity of one man declaring himself the president of a tiny community is the joke itself, parodying both egotism and political ambition. Players can even influence the outcome of the Republic's elections, parodying democracy on a miniature scale. This settlement is one of the most beloved hidden gems in Fallout 3 because of its humor and sharp satire. At the Bethesda ruins, players find a direct Easter egg about the developer itself. The area is filled with raiders and contains computers referencing the company. This self-referential joke is one of the rare times Bethesda explicitly placed itself in the game world, turning the ruins of its real offices into a post-apocalyptic landmark. It is both a gag and a nod to the studio's identity, showing their willingness to poke fun at themselves. Fallout 3 also contains a subtle Easter egg about video game rivalries. In the Arlington Library, players can find terminals with entries mocking other game companies, hidden among bureaucratic notes. While not overt, fans have long interpreted these as lighthearted digs at Bethesda's competitors. This kind of hidden commentary adds an extra layer of humor for players willing to read every note. One of the darker Easter eggs lies in the vaults scattered across the Capital Wasteland. Vault 106 is particularly infamous, as it is filled with hallucinogenic gas. Players wandering through experience visions, hear strange voices, and encounter hostile vault dwellers. The entire setup is an Easter egg about psychological horror, blending Fallout's vault experiment theme with surreal horror imagery. It also ties back to the Lovecraftian tone of the Dunwich building, reinforcing Bethesda's interest in mixing Fallout science fiction with supernatural dread. Vault 112 contains another unusual Easter egg. Here, the player enters a virtual reality simulation called Tranquility Lane, where they find themselves trapped in a perfect 1,950 seconds suburban neighborhood. The simulation is controlled by Dr. Braun, who forces the player to carry out twisted scenarios. This quest is filled with Easter eggs parodying suburban life, television tropes, and horror stories. One of the most famous hidden outcomes is the pint-sized slasher scenario, which turns the player into a horror movie villain within the simulation. The entire quest is both unsettling and satirical, one of Fallout 3's most iconic Easter egg-laden experiences. The game also includes several nods to pop culture. At the Arlington House, players can find a reference to the historical figure Robert E. Lee through dialogue and items. In another area, players discover a skeleton dressed like Indiana Jones, crushed beneath a pile of rocks, a parody of the archaeologist hero's famous adventures. There is also a unique reference to the Lord of the Rings, hidden in the form of a character named Agatha, who gives the player a quest involving a violin. The quest references the importance of music and culture, serving as both tribute and parody. Fallout 3 also thrives on skeleton jokes, similar to later entries. Players can find skeletons arranged in humorous poses, such as two skeletons sitting together with bottles of liquor, or another trapped in a refrigerator. These gags combine dark humor with environmental storytelling, rewarding players who explore abandoned buildings. Another strange Easter egg lies in the Oasis questline, where the player encounters Harold, a character from earlier Fallout games. Harold has been transformed into a massive tree, his body rooted in the ground with branches sprouting from him. This is both a continuation of his story and an Easter egg callback to Fallout 1 and 2. Harold's presence connects the Capital Wasteland to the older games, rewarding longtime fans with continuity and nostalgia. The GNR radio station itself is filled with Easter eggs. Three Dog, the charismatic DJ, constantly makes jokes, references, and commentary that blend humor with lore. His dialogue includes sly nods to Fallout's culture of propaganda, parodying both wartime broadcasts and modern radio hosts. Listening closely to his lines reveals hidden jokes, making GNR one of the most entertaining Easter egg-rich features in the game. Another notable Easter egg is the Nuka-Cola Quantum side quest. This quest requires players to collect bottles of the glowing soda, parodying obsessive collection quests in video games. The absurdity of risking life and limb for soda bottles is the joke itself, an Easter egg about consumerism and player behavior. The unique glow of Nuka-Cola Quantum became so iconic that it appeared in later Fallout games, cementing its place as one of the series' best-running gags. The Capital Wasteland is also home to several subtle historical references. For example, the Jefferson Memorial becomes central to the main story, serving as a base for the water purification project. This location is an Easter egg about American ideals, tying Fallout's plot to real-world symbols of liberty and knowledge. The irony of using such a monument for a desperate survival project underscores Fallout's humor about history repeating itself in twisted forms. Throughout Fallout 3, exploration reveals dozens of these hidden details, from alien crash sites to haunted office buildings, from vaults filled with psychological experiments to ruined monuments turned into ironic parodies. The Capital Wasteland thrives on secrets. Each Easter egg adds to the sense that this world is alive, with stories waiting to be uncovered, ensuring that players who wander off the main path are rewarded with humor, horror, and history.